Tonight is our 11th and the final and concluding lecture in our series on finding God. And before I begin, I'll just take a minute, as my other brothers have just, just echoing them, and express my gratitude to this community and to the management and the various teams. As my dear brothers, the Tijani brothers said, I'm not going to attempt mentioning any particular group or names because I fear I'll miss someone. But for me as well, my primary contact was Mehboob Rai, CUG, the program director, and my deepest appreciation to all of you for having shown such love and kindness. And inshallah, may the mother of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein reward all of you who have served Imam al-Hussein in any form during these last 12 nights. Jazakumullah. If we can have a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So in continuing with our subject, and as we conclude tonight, the first thing that I want to highlight tonight is that finding God is a practical endeavor. It's not theory. It's not something that we simply rationalize, where we fill our heads with concepts and new understanding and philosophies. The uniqueness of Islamic philosophy or falsafa is that it is amali, meaning it's practical. It's not theoretical or nadari. There is a branch of falsafa that is nadari and even irfan nadari, but primarily the aim is practice, because it seeks to transform the human soul and bring it to a full potential or perfection through very real changes to the soul's essence. Some of our greatest philosopher mystics, like Mullah Sadra, argued in his writings that if you're not going to practice what I am writing about and what I'm teaching, then don't even bother reading my book. And some of them even went as far as saying, you will really not understand what I'm even talking about in my book or benefit from it. You're simply wasting your time if you're just going to try and read it without actually practicing it. Henry Corbin, who is a famous French philosopher, theologian, and a professor of Islamic studies, he died in 1978, but he specialized in Shia Islam. He argued that the whole aim of philosophizing in Islam, and particularly in the madhab of the Ahlul Bayt, is to respond to a call that relentlessly summons and calls us. And it is a call to discover and complete ourselves so it's a call to discover our complete being through the recovery of our spiritual dimension. And responding to this call first requires understanding the caller, the one who is constantly calling us, which is what we have tried to explain in the earlier lecture in this series, where we talked about various concepts to increase our understanding or ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then, of course, to take practical steps towards responding to this caller and drawing closer to Him. Now, why must my realizations about God have to penetrate my real self, the very essence, my heart, of who I am as a human being? Why can I not simply read about all these wonderful concepts and philosophies and understanding as we have been doing in these last 12 nights, and then just become more spiritual that way? Why do I have to fast and pray and do all this tasbih and dhikr in order to elevate myself spiritually? Let me explain this with an example. Supposing you created an AI robot, an AI-powered robot, and you taught it every scripture in religion and every book in philosophy, such that it could argue against anyone to defend your faith. And it showed this perfection in its understanding of God's ma'rifah, of knowing God. Perhaps we even created an Islamic AI mystic philosopher bot, okay, that could blow away people's mind in how it spoke about God and defended Islam and the teachings of Quran and the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. And it would be an absolutely phenomenal machine that stands out as a pillar in defending and promoting Islam and the truth. Can we then say that this AI robot has found God? The obvious answer is no. And the question is, why not? Because the realization of God, the ma'rifat of God, manifests as a real change in the very nature and essence of the person who has that ma'rifah and understanding of God. So it is an enlightenment, a form of drawing closer to God, what we call qurb. But this proximity to God is not physical or bound by time and space. It is a coming close to God in an elevation of his understanding who he is, but it also transforms the knower. Whereas in the case of the AI entity, no matter how good it has not changed in its very essence and nature of what it is. So its being enlightened will only hold true if we assume that perfection or kamal in knowing God is based on storing knowledge and then simply regurgitating it and repeating it. What we are seeking when we say we are finding God is not simply a knowing of God at a higher consciousness. What we're seeking is a transformation, a spiritual evolution, a becoming of something other than what we were when we first came to the earth and when we were born. Even if outwardly and physically we still look the same human, in our true essence and soul, we want to transform and evolve and become something very different from what we came as when we came into the world. Otherwise, the whole idea of coming to this world is negated. Every child that is born in this world is a new template. But as it lives its life, it becomes something else. It could finish its life becoming an animal or a devil or an angel, or something even above that, which is an enlightened being, a perfect human being, one whose company even the angels vie for. Why would angels want to keep our company? I mentioned this the other night, that when we go to Jannah, inshallah, the angels want to keep our company. They protect us, they guide us, they pray for us while we're in this world, they inspire us, they record our deeds, and then in Jannah they keep us company and they serve us as their masters and lords. Now, think about it. When you look at a human's animal nature that we call tabi'ah, there is nothing really that the angels would see as being spectacular and want to look up to us for. First of all, in our physical existence as well, our bodies are filled with impurities, isn't it? Blood and pus and all other kinds of impurities. And then in our character as well, when you look at a human being in its animal nature that they use to survive with fear and greed on a day-to-day basis, what we see is jealousy and anger and laziness and hatred and greed. Why would heavenly angelic beings of light want to serve us and be in our company for all eternity? The thing is that, like us, everything in creation is seeking perfection. You will see that even a bug, even the tiniest ant, even an animal, even a plant, is always trying to seek survival. It's trying to live. It's trying to become better than what it is. There is some level of consciousness in it. And so the angels are the same. They are also seeking an elevation. They are seeking something more spiritual, something higher, the next level that they can go up to. So for them to want to be not only in our company, but to vie with each other to serve us, would require us to become such beings that we are superior to them. If I'm still holding grudges from the past, that someone said something to me or someone did something to me and I cannot let go of it, or if my egoic self simply cannot forgive someone who hurt me, even if they hurt me out of ignorance, then how will I ever evolve and become worthy of the angels looking up to me and seeing me as the means by which they can elevate themselves to higher perfection? When our mystics try and explain this whole idea of transformation, they say to have a vision of reality, the mind must experience a total transformation of itself. You have to be reborn but not in any metaphoric sense. You really have to be reborn spiritually. And they argue that a common man who does not have access to these transcendental experiences of reality is like a blind man who relies on a walking stick to find his way. The stick that gives him guidance, this blind man who represents the common man who is not enlightened, that stick represents his mind, his rational faculty, where he's only relying on his mind to arrive at the truth. And the strange thing, says the mystic, is that that very stick that are his eyes, that he believes is the only way to find his way and to find guidance, is actually the very cause of his blindness. Why? Because it is only when Musa alayhi salam throws his stick down that the veils of phenomenal forms fall apart and the splendid beauty of the absolute reality manifests itself. And it is at that point that Musa alayhi salam can now hear the voice of God, as in chapter 20, verse 14, where Allah speaks to him and says, Innani anallah, O Musa, I and I alone am God. La ilaha illa ana. There is no other God besides me. So he hears this as a spiritual, as a unveiling, as a mukashafa, as seeing reality. Now notice, once you have seen the truth in this manner, you no longer need the stick. Meaning, once your vision of the malakut, of the real world is perfected, you don't need mind-made arguments anymore because now you see the truth. Unfortunately, this truth is only yours though. You cannot show it to someone else or share it with others. They must struggle themselves to experience what you have experienced of this malakut. So the mind alone, trying to see absolute reality, says Mullah Sadra in his famous work Al-Asfar, as well as in his Shawahid Rububiyah, is like the eye trying to see the sun. And he says, even from afar, the overwhelming effulgence of the sun blinds the eye of reason. And as the eye of reason goes up to higher stages of reality, gradually approaching the metaphysical region of the absolute, the darkness becomes deeper and everything turns black. What he is saying is, you cannot look at the sun with these fleshy eyes. If you try, you will go blind. At first it will seem orange or yellow, but if you keep staring at the sun or going closer to it, at some point you won't even see the yellow or the orange. You'll just see black. And the same is with only relying on your mind to find God. If you keep insisting, I will only find God with the mind, I will not change myself in my spiritual practice, at some point you will simply go blind in your ability to find God or the truth. And then we become like men sitting in Plato's cave, where we are satisfied with associating shadows from the sun as reality. And these faint reflections of the sun, as what we now see in this world, the world of mulk, become the only true reality for us. So we deny God, we deny that there is life after death, we deny philosophy, we deny irfan. We are happy in our ignorance, and we get very upset if anyone tells us there is actually another reality or the true reality is outside this cave. On the day of judgment, we are pulled out of this cave, this proverbial Plato's cave, forcibly, or rather the cave itself falls apart because the egoic self will no longer exist on the day of judgment. And only our real self will now hear and see. And we will now find ourselves surrounded with the reality of the real world that we call the malakut. And then we find that those who denied this world are in utter shock that I thought this was real. It turns out this was just an illusion. This was just a matrix. That is the real world. So when they come out of their graves, then as we are told in Surah Yasin, chapter 36, verse 52, قَالُوا يَا وَيْلَنَا. They say, woe be unto us. Man ba'athana min marqadina. We were in deep slumber. Who has woken us up? هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون. This is what the merciful Lord had actually promised, and it turns out the messengers were truthful. And then God says to them, which is given in chapter 23, verse 112, قَالَ كَمْ لَبِثْتُمْ فِي الْعَرْضِ عَدَدَ سِنِينَ. So, O insan, how long do you think you lived on the earth? And their response, the next verse, 113. قَالُوا لَبِثْنَا يَوْمْ أَوْ بَعْضَ يَوْمٍ. We think we lived maybe a day or half a day. So as much as this life sometimes feels overwhelming, there is so much suffering, there is so much hardship, I've got so many responsibilities, I've still got I don't know how many decades ahead of me. On the day of judgment, it will feel like we lived for a day or half a day. So in order to see and recognize the realities of these things, they won't come down to our level. It's not possible for these hidden realities of the malakut to manifest in a world of illusion. We must transcend the world of illusions to the world of reality so that our inner eyes open up to them. So it's a spiritual evolution, not as a metaphor, but in a very real, tangible sense, where your soul acquires divine attributes based on the hadith that says, تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. Make your akhlaq, your character, the character of God. Meaning, He is alim, you seek ilm. Okay? He is kind, you seek kindness. He is merciful, you seek mercy. Every attribute of God, you are naturally attuned to acquire it because He is perfect, and by acquiring those attributes, you attain perfection. And when this is complete, then on the day of judgment, we experience an encounter with the divine, what we call liqa Allah. And we then understand the true realities of creation and of everything that exists. At that point, even in this world, if we get to this point of enlightenment, then we no longer fear death, because now we don't identify with this temporary body. If anything, we would long for a release from this body to enter the real world. As I mentioned this hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, in the sermon where he describes the qualities of the God-weary, he says that if it wasn't for a fact that there is a fixed time for their death, a true believer's soul would not be able to stay in his body even for the blink of an eye. I mean, he's talking of believers who are enlightened here. So as we have said previously, on the day of judgment, every one of us, each soul will have a one-on-one encounter with God, with the divine, with his or her creator, with the magnificent, all-paramount creator of the universe, with reality itself. And this is a promise of God that we have been mentioning every single night as our theme verse from chapter 84, verse 6. Ya ayyuhal insan, O human being, innaka kadihun ila rabbika kadhan. You are constantly striving and struggling, even when you're not aware of this. You're constantly seeking what? Qadihun ila rabbika kadhan famulaqih, and you will meet him. So this mulaqih is that liqa, that encounter. But the experience of a soul, good or bad, in this liqa is very different depending on whether a person was a believer or a disbeliever in this world. The experience of a soul that was fleeing from God all its life will be very different from the experience of a soul that was longing for this liqa throughout its life. For the one who kept running away from God, as seeking other things as a poor substitute for God, he or she was actually chasing a mirage all their lives in this temporary body. Look at this verse from Surah Nur, Surah An-Nur, chapter 24, verse 39. It's talking about the faithless, what happens to them when they die. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ بِقِيعَةٍ. Those who are faithless, their actions, their endeavors, the things they chase in life is like a mirage in an open plain. يَحْسَبُهُ الظَّمْآنُ مَاءً. The one who is thirsty thinks there is water at that mirage. He thinks it's actually an oasis. حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءَهُ لَمْ يَجِدْهُ شَيْئًا. Until he comes to that mirage, his journey ends. He comes to that final destination, he finds there is nothing there. But what does he find? وَوَجَدَ اللَّهَ عِنْدَهُ. He finds God is waiting for him at that mirage. فَوَفَّاهُ حِسَابَهُ. So God pays him back his full account. وَاللَّهُ سَرِيعُ الْحِسَابِ. And God is swift in reckoning. So no matter what we do with our lives, if we ignore God and we run after this and we run after that, after wealth, after business, after relationship, after that, we're chasing poor substitutes for God. These are all mirages. There will come a day when all this will be cut off and we will find that what we were actually chasing was God. And He is waiting for us, and now He will pay us back. On the other hand, the faithful are constantly working towards this liqa, this encounter, this meeting for God. As for example, in chapter 2, verse 45 and 46, where we are told, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ, and seek help with patience and with prayer. وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِئِينَ. And this is very difficult except on those who are humble. Now, who are these humble? The next verse says, الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُوا رَبِّهِمْ. These are those who are certain that they're going to meet their Lord. وَأَنَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. And that one day they will return to Him. And again we see in Surah Kahf, the very last verse, chapter 18, verse 110, He says, فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ. So whoever amongst you hopes or believes or longs to one day meet his Lord, to have this liqa, فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا. Then let him do good deeds, righteous deeds, but not just deeds in a vacuum. Faith must accompany it. وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. And let him not associate anyone with God in working towards that meeting. So we notice first that faith is primary before good actions come in. But then we notice that faith is defined as not associating anyone with God. And that is why the mystics love this other verse in the Quran, which is from chapter 12, Surah Yusuf, verse 106, where Allah says, وَمَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ. It's a very interesting verse. And most of them do not believe in Allah without associating partners to Him. Here, Allah is not talking about polytheists or disbelievers. He's talking about believers. He's saying most people who believe in God, they still associate partners with God. This is called hidden shirk, shirk al-khafi, where outwardly we are believers, but in our hearts we are polytheists because our hearts are competing for other things as substitutes for God. And when this verse was presented to our sixth Imam, Imam Jaffar as-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
محمد وآل Muhammad. Brothers, just one more time, if you could just stand and move forward, please. You could just stand and stay forward. One more time, please. Sorry.
Kindly move forward. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. جزاكم الله. Can we have one more loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam was asked to explain this verse, chapter 12, verse 106, that what does it mean that most of them do not believe except that they are polytheists, that they associate with God? He said, it is when a man says, لَوْلَا فُلَانْ لَهَلَكْتُ. Had it not been for so and so, I would have perished. Or when a man says, وَلَوْلَا فُلَانْ لَمَا أَصَبْتُ كَذَا وَكَذَا. If it was not for so and so, I would not have been able to do such and such a thing or attain such and such a thing. Or when a man says, لَوْلَا فُلَانْ لَضَاءَ عِيَالِي. Had it not been for so and so, my family would have been lost. So the companion, so then the Imam says, he says, أَلَا تَرَى أَنَّهُ قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ شَرِيكًا فِي مُلْكِهِ يَرْزُقُهُ وَيَدْفَعُ عَنْهُ. Do you not see that it is God who sustains him and gives him his rizq and protects him, but he is associating other beings with God? So the companion asks the Imam, is it okay if I put it like this? لولا أن الله من علي بفلان لهلكت. If Allah would have not saved me through so and so, then I would have perished. And the Imam said, yes, this is the right way to do it. Use these kind of words. In other words, we should not say, you turned my life around. We should say, God turned my life around through you. We should not say, when I came to Canada, I did not know anyone, I did not have money, so and so helped me. If it wasn't for his ihsan, I wouldn't be where I am today. We should say, when I came to Canada and I had nothing, Allah helped me through so and so. We should not say, my car broke down and so, a good Samaritan saved me. No, Allah saved me through that good Samaritan. And if it was not for God helping me through this doctor, I would never have recovered from my illness. These are just some examples. And as we practice this idea that we attribute all goodness to God and we see all of creation merely as agents of God, sometimes God uses me as his agent to help you, and sometimes God uses you as his agent to help me. But all goodness comes from him and him alone. If we begin to practice this, we will begin to deeply realize that it is only God who is our goal and our destination. And finding him is our real purpose in life. Sometimes, as I said, we are his agents, and sometimes others are his agents to helping us. Notice how this mindset, thinking like this, also takes away all notions of jealousy. Because now, why would I be jealous of someone else because they're more learned, or because they're more good-looking, or because they're wealthier, or because they're, stronger? Is it theirs? No. They're only manifesting his knowledge, his beauty, his wealth, his power. Everyone else is only a means. So when anything else becomes more important to us in our lives than God, it is not just a distraction. It competes for our heart to become our God. Which is why, if you look at chapter 25, verse 43, Allah says, أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you seen him whose desires is his God? And you will find a similar verse in chapter 45, verse 23. Why is it that even after our spiritual striving and finding God, and even if we gain some access to the malakut, we cannot have this direct liqa with Allah in this world? Why does it have to wait until the day of judgment? The answer is because our physical frame and the corporal nature of this mulk, of this existence, cannot withstand the full manifestation of God. It has been tried. The people of Musa alayhi salam asked to see God. And Allah said to them, you cannot see me, but look at this mountain. فَإِنِ اسْتَقَرَّ مَكَانَهُ. I will manifest of myself and direct my attention towards this mountain. If it stands and withholds, then you will see me. And then, فَلَمَّا تَجَلَّ رَبُّهُ لِلْجَبَلِ. When his Lord manifested, there was a tajalli on the mountain, it exploded and shattered into pieces. Musa alayhi salam fell unconscious, and those 70 men died. Because this world cannot take the intensity of that reality. So while we are in this world, God is with us every moment of our lives, but we are unaware of him. We are like someone blind, and the person we seek is sitting right beside us, but we don't know he is beside us. And what we're trying to do in our spiritual struggle is to come to this realization that he is actually sitting beside me, and I can talk to him and communicate to him. But our sight is fully restored, and this encounter can only take place in the real world that we call the hereafter, or the malakut. An analogy of our inability to experience this liqa directly is that of a child in the womb of its mother. It cannot take sustenance directly. The mother has to take sustenance, and then the child feeds through the mother. In that same manner, We can only get glimpses of God's presence through the prophets and messengers, through the imams, through the divine guides, the rightful successors of these prophets, and God reveals himself to us through them and through their teachings. Another analogy would be to put it like this. You cannot hear with your eyes, and you cannot see with your ears, even though they are both sensory perceptions. And the reason is because each organ is installed for a particular purpose. It has a different purpose. In that same manner, these fleshy eyes and these bony ears, or any other physical faculty we have in this world, are incapable of experiencing the divine. To perceive and witness God fully, man needs a new faculty, whose inception might start in this world, but it still needs to develop, sometimes even beyond death. It is a faculty that is beyond our imagination at this point, and beyond any spiritual experience we could ever have in this realm. It is only when this God-seeing faculty is fully developed in the hereafter that we're going to be able to perceive God, and that would be the truest meaning of the liqa. But it's not going to be seeing the way we see things with these eyes. And that's why you will see many verses alluding to this. I'm not going to read the verses. I'm just going to give you verse numbers that you can go look at after. You will see in some verses of the Quran, Allah talks about coming on the Day of Judgment. وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ وَالْمَلَكُ صَفًّا صَفًّا. On the day when your Lord comes. Now, God does not move. That would be against the idea of God leaving a space or occupying a space. But you look at chapter 2, verse 210, chapter 89, verse 22, you will see these examples. Or, for example, the fact that people will be looking at their Lord in chapter 75, verse 23. Okay? So this is not seeing with our bodies as we see things now. And this was the primary message of the prophets and the messengers, that after talking about Tawheed, they came to tell people to seek conviction in the Day of Judgment and to prepare for this divine encounter. In Surah Al-Ra'd, chapter 13, verse 2, Allah talks about how He raised the heavens and the earth and created all things and made them subservient to man and showed you all His signs. Why? لَعَلَّكُمْ بِلِقَاءِ رَبِّكُمْ تُوقِنُونَ. So that you may have full conviction that you will one day encounter your Lord. You will meet Him. Similarly, in chapter 6, verse 154, he says, ثُمَّ آتَيْنَا مُوسَى الْكِتَابِ. Then we gave Moses the book. And then the verse continues. And then as it ends, it says, هُدًى وَرَحْمَةً. A guidance and a mercy. Why? لَعَلَّهُمْ بِلِقَاءِ رَبِّهِمْ يُؤْمِنُونَ. So that they may believe that there will come a day when they will meet God. They will have an encounter with the divine. So even when we speak of the return of God, it's not in the physical sense, because God is omnipresent. He is not going to be any further closer or away from us in the next world as He is to us right now. But when we say return to God on the Day of Judgment, we mean return to God with a higher consciousness, with a higher realization of who He is. That He is our Creator and our Sustainer, a spiritual maturity. And in returning to God, there is a realization that He is the ultimate cause behind every cause and effect. And it comes to full view that He is the true perfection and the only reality. You see, when God created you, in a sense you were perfect. You were innocent, you were pure, you were infallible as a baby. And you were all ready for Jannah at that point. We even refer to babies as being ma'asum, isn't it? But there was one thing missing in you. And that was self-realization, knowledge, and awareness of God. You were angelic, but you were not yet His representative, His Khalifa. You were innocent, but your soul lacked maturity. So the ego and all the suffering that we go through in life are a means to bring that maturity and that self-realization. Self-realization of who you are not is to bring divine realization of who God is. And so, as I come to the end of my lecture tonight, I want to say a few things as a final word on the importance of leading a life that is otherworldly. One of our greatest scholars today, may Allah bless him with a long life, is Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli. He says that if you look at chapter 51, verse 56, Allah says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I did not create man and jinn except to worship me. And he then says, if in a 24-hour day you only remember God for 30 minutes, then for 23 hours and 30 minutes, God is constantly calling out to you and telling you, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ وَمَا خَلَقْتُ وَمَا خَلَقْتُ. You're clicking aimlessly on the internet, God is telling you, I did not create you for this. You're wasting time here and there, He's saying, I did not create you for this. You're looking at this and that, I did not create you for this. So all the time that we are wasting was meant to be for finding Him. And if we progress to a point where we remember Him 4 hours a day, then for 20 hours a day, God is calling out to us and saying, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ لِهَذَا وَمَا خَلَقْتُ لِهَذَا. This is not why I created you. This is not why I created you. He is constantly calling out to us. If we wish to become an enlightened being and a perfect human being before death, our goal should be such that we are worshiping Him 24/7. Because that's the purpose of our creation as given in this verse. So even when we are fulfilling our life's obligation, we're sleeping, we're eating, we're spending time with our family, we're going to work, our hearts should be with Him. Our remembrance should be for Him. Our intention should always be to serve Him. We have the best teachers of Tawheed, as I have been saying in these 12 nights. All we need to do is walk their path. And there is a sermon in Nahjul Balagha, Sermon 21, in which Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says, فَإِنَّ الْغَايَةَ أَمَامَكُمْ. Your goal is before you. وَإِنَّ السَّاعَةَ تَحَدُّوكُمْ مِنْ خَلْفِكُمْ. And the hour of resurrection is driving you from behind. And then he says these words, تَخَفَّفُوا تَلْحَقُوا. Keep light and overtake. Sayyid Radi, who compiled Nahjul Balagha, has a whole explanation for these two words only, how powerful they are if you understood them in Arabic. Keep light in this world and overtake. فَإِنَّمَا يُنْتَظَرُ بِأَوَّلِكُمْ آخِرُكُمْ. Because the last ones of you, are being awaited by the first ones for the Day of Judgment. They've gone ahead of you, they're just waiting for us. Once the number of souls that God decreed to be created have come and gone, it is then, as they put it, show time. Now, these words, keep light and overtake, are worth their weight in gold. If there is anything worthy of being written and pasted in front of our desks so that we see it every day before us, it is these words of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Keep light and overtake. The reason we pressure our children to succeed in worldly matters is because we are worried they shouldn't suffer later in life. And that's just for a few decades. But what about them suffering for all eternity if they fail to evolve spiritually? It turns out we don't believe the hereafter is as important as this world. Otherwise, what else could it be? Supposing I have two friends, who will I be closer to? Supposing I have two subjects at school, which one will I study more passionately? Supposing I play two sports, which one will occupy me more? Supposing I have two jobs, which one will I give more attention to? Supposing I have two illnesses, which one will be more urgent for me? Of course, the one that is more precious, more dear, more serious, more urgent, more important to me, isn't it? So if this world and the hereafter are to be placed before me, which one is more important and more dear to me? Our actions and what we do from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed speaks for itself. So let each one of us be a judge for himself. And on the Day of Judgment, the day of liqa, Allah will say to us, to each one of us, to you and to I had a covenant and a pact with you. I was going to read this pact and covenant, but in the interest of time, I won't. You can go look it up yourself. It's Surah 7, verse 172 and 173. But Allah will say to us, I made a pact with you and a covenant with you before I sent you to this world. And I asked you to do only one thing while you are in exile. I wanted only one thing from you. What was it? Find me. Come, find me. Where will I be? I will be sitting right beside you every time you remember me. Ana jalisun man dhakarani. As soon as someone remembers me, I'm sitting right beside him, waiting for him to empty his heart of everything else so that I may take my rightful place in his heart, because the heart of a believer is my throne. So no matter what your physical disability, no matter what your financial circumstance, no matter what your family and background, this is the one thing God will ask you. How did you fail to find me? And so, if anyone asks you, if you had to summarize this entire series of lecture over 11 nights, what would it be? Your answer should be, the purpose of life is to find God. And then if anyone asks you, so how should we go about finding God? Your answer should be, keep light and overtake. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم صلى الله وسلم عليك يا أبا عبد الله روحي وأرواح العالمين لك الفداء يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. Until last night, we were crying for Hussein alayhi salam and his ashab and his ansar and his children. From tonight, we begin crying for Imam as-Sajjad alayhi salam and Zainab alayhi salam and the women and children of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Just as Aba Abdullah was the warith of the Anbiya, the heir to all the prophets and their message, so was Imam as-Sajjad. And he and Sayyidah Zainab, in fact, saved Imamat. If you think about how Imam as-Sajjad fell sick and was so ill that he was unable to go to fight, that itself is a miracle. That itself is proof of Imamat. Because what were the chances of that happening? And Imamat would have perished if it was not for him. Abu Hamza al-Thimali says, every time I came to Imam as-Sajjad, he was crying for his father. 34 years he cried for Aba Abdullah. He said, one day I couldn't take it any longer. I said to him, Yabna Rasulullah, how long will you keep crying? Is there no end to your crying for your father? 34 years. He said, oh Abu Hamza, you have not been fair. Yaqub lost his Yusuf. He knew Yusuf was alive, but he cried until he went blind. I lost 18 Yusuf before my eyes. Abu Hamza says, I said to the Imam, trying to console him, I said, Al-qatlu lakum al-aada, yabna Rasulillah. Being killed is common for you, the Ahlul Bayt. وَكَرَامَتُكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ شَهَادَةً. Allah has honored you with martyrdom, the Ahlul Bayt. The Imam said, again, you have not been fair, O Abu Hamza. It is true, martyrdom is an honor for us. But is it also an honor for our women to be tied and paraded in the bazaars of Kufa and Sham? Imam as-Sajjad would sit and cry and say, Asham, Asham, Asham. Sometimes he would say, whenever I see my aunt Zainab, I cry. Why? Because I remember the time when the tents were set on fire. وَالْمُنَادِي يُنَادِي إِحْرِقُوا بُيُوتَ الظَّالِمِينَ. And a man was calling out, burn down the tents of the oppressors. The fourth Imam alayhi salam kept crying on the day of Ashura. The day after Ashura, the next day, when they came and found that there was a man who was still alive, but he was very ill, they tied him in chains and in shackles, and they forced an iron collar down his neck. And the scars of this collar remained with him until the end of his life. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam said that when my father died and I was giving him ghusl, I still found the scars from 34 years ago of the chains and the shackles and the whip marks on him and the collar marks on him. A man named Sahal ibn Sa'ad says that when Imam as-Sajjad and the women were being paraded in the streets of Kufa, He says, I came to Imam al-Sajjad and I said, Yabna Rasulullah, is there anything I can do for you? He first said to me, oh Sahal, see if you can get the men holding the heads of my father to move away so the people don't look at my aunts and my women folk. Sahal says, I went to those soldiers, I gave them some money and said, please move further away with the heads you are carrying. I came back again, I said, Yabna Rasulullah, is there anything else I can do for you? Imam al-Sajjad said, oh Sahal, is there a piece of rag or a cloth that you can get me? Sahal says, I began wondering, why would he want a rag or a piece of cloth? I said to him, Yabna Rasulullah, I can get you a new piece of cloth. He said, no Sahal, just get me a rag. Sahal says, when I brought the rag to Imam al-Sajjad, he took the rag and he began putting it in the collar in his neck. And he says, as he put the rag to remove some of the pain, I saw blood dripping from the neck of Imam al-Sajjad. On the day after Ashura, Umar ibn Sa'd and Shimr al-Jawshan, they gathered the army. They said, we are leaving for Kufa. They brought their whips and told the women to get on unsaddled camels. Zainab and Kulthum helped all the women to get on the camel. At one point, Zainab alayhi salam was left alone. Who is going to help her? She turned towards Furat and said, Abbas, you helped me in Medina and everywhere we stopped. Imam al-Sajjad came with his zanjeer and the shackles and the chains and helped his aunt Zainab on the camel. Then Umar ibn Sa'd said, before we leave, let's take them through the battlefield. Let them see the bodies of their loved ones. Janab Zainab Masayib, she says that when we went through the battlefield and we saw the headless body of Hussein, I looked at my nephew Sajjad. He became so pale, I thought his soul was going to leave his body. I had to find a way to distract him so he does not die. I threw myself from the camel. While her hands were tied, I cried out, Wa Husaina, Wa Madluma. This qafila came out that same day towards Kufa. They reached outside Kufa, it was already dark. Umar ibn Sa'd sent a message to Ibn Ziyad and said, oh Ibn Ziyad, we have arrived, shall we come in? He said, no, do not come in. We are decorating the city. We shall have a parade the next day. This was the same Kufa when Imam Ali was there and Imam al-Hasan had brought Zainab. When he was outside Kufa, he messaged Imam Ali and said, I have arrived, I am outside Kufa. Amir al-Mu'mineen had said to Imam Hassan, oh Hassan, do not bring Zainab right now. It is daytime. Wait for the night and then bring my daughters in the cover of the night. The next day when the sun rose, Umar ibn Sa'd brought all the women out into Kufa, into the bazaar. As they went out into the bazaar, some were throwing stones and some were pouring hot water on the Ahlul Bayt. Some were throwing dates at the children of the Ahlul Bayt. Zainab and Kulthum were crying out, oh people, as-sadaqatu alayna haram. Habiba was in her house. Her maid came and said, oh Habiba, there is a strange tamasha outside in the bazaar. Habiba said, my mistress Zainab had told me never see a tamasha of prisoners. I will not go out and look. The maid said, but oh Habiba, this is a very different group of prisoners. There is a lady saying, as-sadaqatu alayna haram. The heart of Habiba began beating faster. There is only one family in the world for whom sadaqah is haram. She came out and said to her maid, show me which lady is saying sadaqah is haram on us. The maid pointed out Zainab to Habiba. Habiba came to Zainab and said, oh lady, where are you from? She said, I am from Medina. Habiba began wondering, who is this lady? Which mahalla are you from? I am from the mahalla of Banu Hashim. Habiba began saying, would you happen to know Hussein ibn Ali? Zainab looked up at Habiba. Habiba, you did not recognize Zainab. Hussein's head is on the spear, reciting Quran. You do not need to go to Medina for the ziyarat of Hussein now. Wa Husseina, wa Ghariba, wa Madluma.